Yeah, I think we will like to start. So, Nikki, over to you.
Yes, ma'am. So good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our today's speaker, Ms Nidhi Nikum, ma'am. She is currently advisory board member at E3W Limited, which supports women in their financial services and career. She began her career as a software engineer at SCL. She also worked with ANZ Banking Group for more than 15 years in different job roles dealing different technologies. She also got featured at E3W Limited blog as an inspiring woman in financial services. Today she will be sharing her experiences and expert opinion on risk management and application of digital and artificial intelligence in financial services to keep oneself afloat in financial world. We welcome you, ma'am. Now I'd like to hand over this session.
Thank you so
Right.
much, Nikki.
And I would also like to take just a minute, and I also want to take this opportunity to welcome you formally for the session, and it's wonderful. So over to you, Nidhi. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Nikki. Thanks for that. Was a great introduction. I've never heard anybody else talk about me other than myself. So it was good to know what you have Googled on me and found out about me. Yeah, so I've been with a bank for more than 16 years. Prior to that, I was with the software company. So yeah, my banking background is what is strongly there in my career, and I've worked in the technology sector of it, the risk division of it, and the frontline corporate finance institutional banking space. So today I am here to share with you how you should try to sort of make a mark in the financial world, the career. I hope you can see the screen that I'm sharing. If anybody cannot, just let me know. But this is what the screen looks like. So we're going to talk about how to ace your career in financial world. So the batch that has just come in, welcome to the finance world. It's quite a numerical capability world. However, we forget about the right brain activity that is involved in a lot of decision making, and we're going to talk about a little bit on that. And congratulations to the year that is going to pass out. uh, Good, well done on you. You have completed 2 years of your education. It's tough to complete an MBA. I think just to aspire to crack the entrance exam and then just to spend a lot of your energy and time on studying for 2 years is a good feat. And you must have had a lot of due diligence behind going for this higher education, which led you here. So hang in there. I think you guys are passing out at a bit of a rough time in the weather, I would say. The economic cycles are very different at the moment. But there are lots of things to look forward to, because as some clever person said in the world, that challenges and challenging environment, especially pandemics, create opportunities, and that is what you should be looking out for. So with that, I'm going to kick off the session. Um, so I'm going to just keep pausing in between to see if anybody would like to ask a question after every slide. We'll take it at that pace. And if something's not clear, probably reach out to the chat, and then Vishali, maybe you can stop me or wave at me in between, and then I'll answer the question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Other students, kindly keep your microphone mute.
Yeah. And Vishali will keep repeating that during the presentation. Okay. I'm going to go to my slide, and I'm going to just hang on. Yeah, so financial services, the business you are in basically is essentially the organizations that are there to make money, right? So you have done your MBA finance, or you're about to start on a journey for 2 years. So I'm not going to talk about your journey for 2 years. Clearly, you have very skilled professors to teach you specific uh, programs and subjects to cope you with the world that you're about to enter. So let's say you are job ready now, okay, and you are about to get into the world where you either hold a job or you're applying for roles. You're trying to find a job for yourself. What's next you're expecting? So I don't know what all has been taught to you or what you're looking forward to. I'm talking in respect to both the batches here. Is everything that you do in the financial world, so financial world comprises of all the financial institutions, the banks, the investment services, the asset management, the hedge funds, the insurance companies, private, public sector. I'll keep the charities and the government organizations out of these financial services for the conversation because their purpose is slightly different. But all the previous organizations are meant under the financial services. They have 4 things to do, or rather 3, and everything else is to support that. Okay, and what are those? So one is cost, the other is revenue, third is risk. And in the last 25 years, innovation word has really become one of the pillars of measurement of any company's performance. And everything else, as I mentioned, there is blah. What that means is everything else is just there. All other kinds of jobs, roles, industries, services, everything fits into that. If you're not reducing the cost, not increasing the revenue, not reducing the risk, you are doing nothing in a financial services. What that means is every job that you have taken, are about to take, or you aspire to do will have 3 components, which will either talk about reduction in cost, you have to increase the revenue, or reduce the risk. So when we sort of get our job descriptions and we apply for roles, we do internships, I think organizations don't explain this very cleverly and clearly to you, that this is what you ought to understand about your role. But I just want you to know that these are the very important 3 things. And innovate, because through innovation comes a degree of change into an organization, which will again impact the cost, revenue, and risk. So every time you take up a job, understand these 3 aspects of your job that you're about to do. Every time you update your resume and apply for a role, make sure that you are converting the activities that you've done in terms of cost, revenue, and risk. It's very important. If you don't do that, you will never be able to harness the possibility that can come with explaining your task to the next role. Now, in the financial world, we've largely seen a history of 200 odd years in the banking and financial sector. That's how old the industry is. And it has always run on relationship mode. But in close to 1970s or rather 80s, I would say, the financial services sector started developing a core niche around data. So for you, when you start your job, doesn't matter you've done MBA finance, but data will be a very strong core component of your job. And you can let me know if I'm not making sense to you. Okay. To understand how we design the future of the industry we are in, you need to understand the past, which is the history involved, which is also being converted into the digital format now, to understand what we did well in the past in order to design a future. So your historic existence of the industry itself is pivoted around the data that already exists in the systems for so many years. For example, I worked in a bank that has got 160 years plus old history. We have last 40 old years of data into the organization, which is one of the strengths for us to go into the next cycle, where the industry will change completely, the platforms will change completely. What will remain is the data. So our future is really tied into the historic value of the data that we hold. So when you go into a job, try to understand the background of the organization you are part of, the pieces of work that they do, the kind of products and clientele they interact with, because that is a data point that you need to understand in order to execute a job. What you'll notice is our industry has been organized around products for time immemorial, where you'll hear things like or this is securities, or this is exchange, this is foreign exchange, this is trading, or this is loan, or this is syndicated or bilateral deals. These are all product types. So when I say product, anything, any facility that a bank or a financial institution is giving to its customer, whatever the kind of customer, whether it's retail or industrial, investment grade customer, these are the products, okay? But that industry itself is changing. Now, the financial services sector cannot continue to exist around the pillars of products. We are very, very strongly focusing and pivoting around the behavior of our customer. And when I say behavior of the customer, it's a regular Joe on the road, which is you and me, probably a retail customer for the banks or for the financial institutions, or these large other banks, other financial organizations, multinational corporations, big companies, big giants, okay, like JP Morgan or like Reliance in India, like Tata. Their behavior is changing, and to understand that behavior, you will come across something called a customer journey or a user story. These are the buzzwords that you'll hear in the organization that you are about to join or will be joining. And that is essentially based upon around the consumption model. So if you have studied so far about products and a very little about behavior, I would actually ask you to up your game towards the behavior aspect of a customer or the customer's journey rather than just products, because you will have more success at work because you'll have the correct slice, a viewing slice to look at the information. And what is the information? The information is all data. For an MBA finance student who would be taking up a job or a career in this world, you would be looking at lots of numbers, lots of processes, lots of policies, and very importantly, lots of systems. I'll just see if there's a question here. Okay. Ma'am, could you tell us about the finance manager life in the business world? Okay. Ajay Jagtab, I think that was your first question when I said if anybody has any initial questions. So Ajay, I'm going to cover this during my talk, and I've just started with this, that this is what somebody who's working in the world of finance. I'm not specifically sure if you're a finance manager, because that's again a title, but I'll talk through what you can look forward to. And maybe some of you may want to think, is this something really I want to do? You don't know, right? When you do MBAs or any education for that matter, guys, we really don't know if this is what it converts into at a skill level. And is this what we want to do at a task level? That is where the difference in our knowledge versus our execution lies, and some of us change the course of our journey. For example, I'm a civil engineer. It's got nothing to do with the job that I do. What acumen I have or the aptitude I have of an engineer is what I use on an everyday basis. Whereas I've worked in technical as well as non-technical, managerial, portfolio-based, analytical-based, people management-based roles. Okay, so it really depends the skill that you acquire and how do you transform that skill into something which is task. Task means verb or action-based. Okay, so but that's a great question, Ajay. I'm glad you asked that. So I hope this conversation is making sense to you. So when you sort of get into a job, you make sure that when you hear these words, you can somewhat relate back to this conversation and say, hey, yeah, I remember we had this conversation. Somebody has spoken to us about customer journey or user story. It's not a technical buzzword. It's something that all of us needs to be aware of in any business we are in. And I'll give you an example. So for a retail customer in a retail journey, a customer, let's say, attains adulthood at 18 or a right to vote, and hence can start banking services, licenses and all those events in our grown up or adulthood. Then you obviously are attending a college, then you would like to get a job, then you get a job, you want a loan, you probably want to get married, then you have kids, then you start preparing for kids education, or you want to buy a bigger house, you want to have a holiday home, or you want to take care of your parents, you have a health insurance. These things that I'm speaking in between, these are your milestones in a human life. But for a financial sector, that is my customer journey. My retail customer is going through these things. So I need not wait for the customer to turn around at a certain milestone and ask me for a product. No, I already have a significant 200-year-old behavior information stored in my data. So I would better prepare my organization to, to provide those services to my customer. And that's where the paradigm of products is getting broken down and a customer journey is coming to fore. And the same paradigm you can apply to a financial company, a company which is a multinational, whether they look for to credit limits, they want to look for trade finance products, they want to look at cross-selling of FX or intra-company loans, you know. So it really depends what your client is going through. Does it make sense so far? Now, when I was growing up, I always took words as subjects and as thinking that these things have got silos around them. You understand silos, right? Boundaries around things, blocks. Our education system creates a lot of boundaries because we need to assess the ability of students around a particular subject. Otherwise, it will become like an uncontrollable nuclear fission to sort of gauge the student's capability on holding a level of acumen for a subject. But in my personal experience and view, finance, economics, political science, investment models, especially investment theories or investment strategies, and risk are all interconnected. To understand one, you need to be aware about others. Does it make sense? Does anybody have any questions so far?
There is a question, Nidhi, which is in the chat. So where Tirtho is asking that if you can give some insights about equity research domain and how we can get into credit risk. So what would be the skill set which is required for that?
So equity research domain. Okay, yeah, right. That's right.
And credit risk.
Credit risk, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you say Tirtho? Because it's not on my chat. So okay, so it must have.
Yeah, it is. It is actually. Yeah, it is in the chat box. I don't know, like why. So it is there.
Yeah, I can't see actually. Yeah, I mean I can understand there are 192 participants, so I'm sure there's like lots of questions. But yeah, you hang in there and let me know if any questions are there.
Sure.
Tito, thank you for your question. Yes, I will try to address equity research. If not in today's session, then we can have another one with due permission from your professors, whether we can take this up. Credit risk, yes, I've got a huge background in credit risk, so I can definitely talk to you about that. Yeah, so we'll come to that. So try to quickly jump. But so far, so now that you mentioned about research and credit risk, when you're doing research, you cannot not fail to know what is economics like, what is the political environment at the moment, and what exactly is emanating from those scenarios of economics and political views, which is contributing to risk. Okay, so that's why I say it's understandable that you've got 2 years of MBA, but your education doesn't stop here. Your real education really starts. So continue on that. You know, when you say education, if you cannot get tutored, if you cannot attend any courses, which you cannot, you know, come on, you've got a life as well. Buy books, read them, have conversation. Never drop the penny on learning things because you're in a field where continuous upskilling is the norm of the day. Okay. Okay. Let me just say, so when you sort of take up a job and you just, you know, move through the churnings of the bigger or a smaller organization, you'll always hear words like culture, the right mindset, innovation. These 3 words, believe you me, for the last 18 years, these words have never left me. And I talked to so many people at so many different levels that culture is a big thing because we are such a geo-connected world in which we deal, we create business opportunities, that it's very important to understand the different cultures. And the mindset is really about, are you open? There's a different kind of mindset, open mindset and closed mindset. I really request you to read about it. because that really draws you into a world of innovation where new things are being created, and you will really feel cut out or left out if you do not dwell on these three things. These three things are really magnets of the financial world, and they are used in different degrees. They could be your KRAs, which is key result areas. When you take up a job, people give you, your boss will give you a key result area and say, I'm going to measure you on this performance, that performance, some key points. And at the back of those key result areas would be three things: culture, mindset, innovation. Keep that always at the back of your mind. Whatever you do has got a bearing on these. So I'm going to go past the slide now. So what have you learned in this? Any job you do, you're going to reduce the cost, you're going to reduce the risk, you're going to increase the revenue, and you're going to contribute in innovation. If you do not want to do any of these four things, you're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong job, you're in the wrong career, you're in the wrong education. Find something else to do now rather than regretting later, because anything you do will be pivoted around cost, revenue, and risk. All right? So move to the next thing, which is, so essentially when you join this world of finance, people would look up to you as, you want to be part of the solution, you don't want to be part of the problem, because in the financial world there are already enough problems. So they want you to be innovative, to be reducing cost, to be increasing revenue, and to be reducing risk. You have anything else as an interest, find another job to do. Okay, so when you take up a job, I keep saying the word job, I don't know if you like this or not, but I really want you to understand that you have knowledge, something that you've learned, have been learning. With experience, it becomes very sharp. So let's say if knowledge starts like this, with the experience, with the years of learning, it becomes like this. This is the tip of your knowledge base. This is a sharpened skill set that you can spearhead to become something in your life. All of your jobs, we can break them down into tasks. Tasks, basically actions. Okay? Do this, get that, report that, create this, run this job, report on this, let's brainstorm, whatever you do. Okay? Again, pivoted around cost, revenue, and risk. Remember that these jobs are small dots in your graph of career. Doing one job does not mean your career has taken off or gone down. Sometimes you will feel very exasperated or tired or fed up of doing that particular job. Find another job to do. Find another task. Ask from your peers, from your seniors, from the organization's executives to give you another kind of task. But don't think of changing the company, because the company can provide different jobs. Now, a lot of people make this mistake, a fundamental mistake of they want to quit a company just because they don't like what they're doing. Within an organization, there's a lot of stuff to be done, and you can actually spend some time finding that out. Okay, so let's make that very clear for you. Okay, now each job that you take up should, I've written will, but I would rather tone down myself, it should teach you a core skill and a transferable skill. Okay, now you may say, okay, so what's a core skill and a transferable skill? Core skill is, if I'm a farmer, I have a core skill of farming because I know when I should be sowing my seeds, taking care of my seeds, when it germinates, when to water it, when to take care of the sapling, when to transplant the sapling into a bigger plot of land, when to harvest the fruit, when to make sure the pollinations happen, when to keep the bees happy, how to make sure the compost of the soil is taken care of, the ratio of the water to compost to fertilizer is good enough. If I'm into organic farming, basically the works, right? That is your core. What are the transferable skills? If I'm a farmer, I could use a lot of learning of nurturing a natural resource. That's my transferable skill. And I could use that. So let's say if my farm is, or land is taken away from me, I would rather go and teach others how to do farming, make money out of that, or take care of other natural resources which needs replenishing nature of the natural cycle, right? So that's just transferable skills. So for example, you could be hired to run a project. The company wants you to run a project to maybe reduce some cost There's an end-to-end, let's say, credit process that takes, I don't know, I'm just making this up while I speak. Let's say it takes 50 days. Your boss asks you, can you reduce it down to 15 days? And you take up that project. So your ability to execute that project is your transferable skill that you would have learned on different jobs. And the core skill that you pick up on this is finding out real niche ways to reduce the cost or replace the systems or upskilling other people to do their jobs better. So when you take up a job, I want you to do this, that anything that you do from now onwards, or even if while you're studying, the guys who've just come into the MBA finance batch, I want you to remember that anything that you do, you start filing in your mind, what's a core, what's transferable, okay? Now your tasks are basically around 4 categories of core jobs, the support jobs around them, some discretionary piece of work, and a bit of noise. Every time you take up a job in the financial services, it will have 4 components. Now, we don't write this in the job description when you get or you apply for a role. These are not the headings used, but if you go through with the fine tooth comb through any job spec is short for job specification, you can find, oh, this is the core part of my job, that maybe I'd have to run a general ledger for the bank, or I'm responsible for the portfolio of the bank, or I'm going to manage the relationship managers, or I'm going to put an equity research paper for so and so. That's your core job. Okay. Support is working with other departments, working across teams, and there'll be some discretionary component and there'll be some noise attached to it. So the course will teach you SMA skills, which are specialized market skills, right? Subject matter expertise, SMA is short for subject matter expertise. And that will lead you to a vertical growth. You know how you go from an analyst to a senior analyst to I don't know what the terms are, maybe an associate director and a director, that kind. This is a vertical growth. Okay, let me see. I think there's a question here. Okay, so Rupal Agrawal, thanks for your question. It says what skills we should adapt before joining any financial organization. Okay, that's a good question. Rupal, I won't be giving a list at the moment, but I think we can have another session. The things I wanted to include was, for example, in risk space, which is my forte, as to what different skills you need and how you go from here to there. But I wanted to keep it more generic this time. But after this session, if you still have the question, you can come back to me, okay? But the MBA finance is a very wide umbrella of things that you're learning, and it's good. It's good to learn umbrella skills rather than just one specific skills. Once you take a job and try different things, you can always upskill yourself from courses from, let's say, I don't know, somebody mentioned about equity research and credit risk. You could do from Fitch Ratings company, you would have heard of that company, and Moody's Analytics. They run specific courses on corporate finance, on financial risk management, on enterprise risk management, or equity research. They are a bit expensive on the side. So once you sort of do a job, earn some money, then you can go into certain specializations, which give you certifications in doing that particular job. You've got to be very careful. I mentioned this, I acknowledge this, with experience, this becomes your skill, a sharp edge to spearhead into the world. Now, when you do these specific things very early in your career, you could get pigeonholed into doing just that kind of job. And if that suits you, it's great. If it does not, then you would want to really time it well as to when you want to do those courses. Give yourself first 4 to 5 years in your career before you, especially after doing a post-graduation. If I was you, I would give myself good 5 years to understand what is the next thing I want to do in terms of learning. Because in the first few years of your jobs, you are picking a lot of transferable skills which you don't realize, because you think, oh, it's admin kaam hai. This is all admin related, man. It's not true. Like I mentioned, the support roles, they accumulate a lot of transferable skills. They give you an ability to work on different tasks. And I'm not saying multitasking, I'm saying different tasks. So you increase your capability to work on different things, or not just one thing. And it's easier to do it when you are at the young end of your career than at the later end of your career. You learn a good quality of teamwork. It's very important for your own personal growth. if you are into an individual sport, let's say tennis, and you suddenly go on to play cricket, you will find it very difficult, not because of the different skills involved, but basically for the teamwork that I'm talking about. The support roles will have a lot of shared responsibilities. So people, it really goes with the personality, if you can, or if you're a very leadership minded person and you want to just be one person who shoulders all the responsibility. So it really depends whether you like it or not, but try different kinds of jobs. It's really empowering in a way. You learn collaboration, you learn a lot of organization goodwill. When you go and you talk to somebody, oh yeah, everybody knows you in this organization. Yeah, they do, because this guy has not been doing something, an SME role, but a support role where he's been working or she has been working with different kinds of people across the organization. That leads to a horizontal growth. So you have a big capacity around the organization to grow. Now, the two things I mentioned about discretionary and about noise is really, you could at a very start of your job or at a later few years, you would find bosses who want you to work for them, not for the organization. So be very careful of such people. They will give you discretionary tasks to be, just get it done. I don't know how, man. I don't care if legal is okay with this or compliance is okay with this, but just get it done. So be very careful of that language when you hear, because these bosses could make your life easy or tough. You could just spearhead into a very good trajectory because the boss has a very strong social equity in the organization. And if you are his or her right hand, then you sort of take off, and it could be the other way around. Okay. The noise is really about, every job has got some of the other noise, but sometimes people are brought in to address some specific things, some hard skin, thick skull people who know how to reduce the noise, who will develop skills to deflect what is being thrown at them and really keep their focus high on getting the work done. And in financial world, that kind of job exists a lot, where there's a conflict in priorities between different departments, different teams. So people would be thrown into this deep end. Especially, at the start, Vaishali mentioned about people joining Deloitte and KPMG. I think they'll get a lot of experience of handling this noise, because a consultant's life is not easy. You work with a lot of people. Okay, so many people raise hands. I don't know what's going on. Let me just have a look.
Nidhi, actually, there was some concern at some places. My IT person told me that the screen was, your PPT was not visible. So that's what I was checking with them. But it is visible, because on my screen, I could see your jobs and skills. But he was having a concern. So I was just checking that with the students. So we are good. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Please go ahead.
All right. Right. So, so people in consultants jobs will learn a lot of ability for support, noise management, which is also called perception management. You would hear that word. Changing the narrative of the story, which means you're trying to bring in a bigger change in the organization. However, the organization, for whatever reason, finds it difficult to make that change happen. And that's really at the people's level, at the other employees level. So you want to change the narrative of the story that, look, this is all good change. This will bring in about more revenue. It will reduce the cost, reduce the risk. Holding that conversation to your side of the bargain is a skill. It's a real skill. And it takes years to develop. Some people are maybe natural and born with it, but you would need to have a good exposure to it. And the best you learn is when you have a really shitty job and a really shitty boss. So what are you learning today? If you have a job that you do not like, don't let go of it. Always remember the first thing I said, every job teaches you one core skill and one transferable skill, at least. Stick to the job, do your work, give your time. Any job that you take up, spend 2.5 years minimum in it, and then call it quits. Never write off your life on it. Always keep your job different than your personal life. Draw a strong line in between. But every job will have these 4 components, so try to juggle between them. Okay. I think the most fundamental question for you to ask is really, where will I get my maximum freedom to be me? Some people are very easy to follow others. Some people like to be their own mind person. Some people are like, oh yeah, I'm getting my money paid, I'm fine, which is great. There's nothing wrong in any definition of this. Is you defining yourself to be happy. But at some point, you would want to have a maximum freedom at job. Freedom from other people always constantly being on your head, managing you, telling you what to do or what not to do. So ask yourself when you're taking up a job, cross-lining everything with these 4-5 boxes as to what is it that I'm letting go of, what is it that I'm bargaining for. Okay, does it make sense? Let me see if there's a question. Yeah. Right. Okay, so this picture, I just put this picture because I'm sure, I mean, you guys are having this pandemic time, and I don't know when was the last time you guys were in the room together. But if this is like a imaginary thing that you can do to yourself, look at left and right of the screen or of the people who are put in this call log. I'm sure the first year students are interacting with the second year and the classes that have sort of passed out, you know. It's really important that you know those people. Learn to bridge your differences, you know, learn to get along with yourself, because if at this level you cannot, the working world is going to be very tough. Okay, in finance it's a very cutthroat competition. It's a very left brain oriented activity, so a lot of numbers, a lot of it's not a right brain based activities place. So people are very drawn into themselves. And then of course there's a country and a culture perspective, and there's a different how the organization operates in a certain place. So if you cannot make a network amongst yourself, you have to really think back and see, do I need to get a coaching on how to network and be able to work with others? And the picture why I put this here is, if you know, these are exciting times. I think when you're studying or when you're about to start on a job, if somebody gives you a bright idea and they calls you over to their room or to a chat or their casual conversation, say, hey, I've got an idea and I'm thinking about this, let's do this together. Go and listen to those people. You know, not everybody is good in ideating, but everybody needs people to work together. Remember that. What did I say? Not everybody is good in ideating. Ideating means creating ideas, but everybody can work together. That is what you define yourself, right? So if you come across people who are innovators, who got ideas, who want to do things differently, you know, like a startup culture, they want to float their own company, go and listen to them. Don't shy away from opening up, because you are living in an era where the population on the planet is already too high. The jobs are very, very protected. And it's not necessary that you'll always have a job in your life. Okay. And how do you build a network? By listening to others, working with others, coming to know, oh, somebody else has a great idea. Don't be jealous. Don't be mean. Don't think, oh, this guy thinks or this girl thinks of herself too much. No, that's small mind. That's small mentality. That's not how you will ever learn to network. Okay. I'm saying that to you. I know you guys are all grown up adults, but I'm saying this to you because our education system and how we are raised in our society makes us sort of compete with each other always, right? We have so much of inter-competition that comes in between for us to be able to interact with others. So for ideas, innovation, networking, go to the room of the person who invited you for an idea. Don't miss the opportunity. You never know, you could become a millionaire. Okay. I work with a lot of people who are at the start of their ideation or are already running a startup company. And I'm happy to share away my wealth of knowledge for them to design whatever they want to. In everything, you don't expect a monetary return, but there's a lot of goodwill, and it always comes back to you in some form. Remember that. That's the baseline of networking, guys. So what have you learned today? First thing is human filing system. You'll do that to your career, to your job. You'll find out what core and what transferable skills there are. And then based upon the job that you take, the discretionary and the noise component in your job, you will try to find, is this actually an okay job for my moral compass, you know? Keep your own personal self away from your job. Keep a strong middle line in it. Try to ask yourself what you can trade for and against. Is this something I can do? My boss expects me to work 16 hours a day. Is this what I want to do? I don't know. I'm not giving an advice. But it will be a really shitty attempt not to see what it is like to work for 16 hours. It'll also be a very shitty attempt to continue to work for 16 hours for many, many months. It's not good for your health, isn't it? So take a weighted approach. Life in the financial services is not always black and white. There's a lot of gray in it. Deal with it. Okay. Go and listen to your people, to your network, your beautiful, wonderful 170 plus people on this call. That's your network. That's right there, over there. Now, these 170 or 200 odd people are going to go and work into different organizations. Some will be teachers, mentors, coaches, deal makers, bankers, financial institution runners, MNC heads. Even if they are not, even if they end up becoming a waiter in a bar, it's okay. Network with them. Okay. Find out what Haruki Murakami did before he became a millionaire. He writes books. His books are published in 42 languages. He's a Japanese guy who never spoke English. But he used to be a bartender. And he used to get this fantastic ideas meeting people over the bar. He was a very accomplished painter as well, but he could not stick to a job. But eventually he became a writer. So why I'm throwing this to you is listen, network. That's very important. It's a very important human skill to have. That's what machines don't have. Machines do not listen and network, other than if it's a surveillance tool. You have the ability to interact with others. Keep that on high. Okay. So keep true to yourself. You should not be letting others define you. You should do what you want to do. Okay. Now, right. I want to talk to you about. So somebody mentioned about risk, right? So I put this because I give you a starting of the, what you could potentially be doing and how your jobs and things will come at you. Now, I spent a lot of time in risk. So I just put one slide on risk in terms of when you hear risk, what is it that you should understand? Now, any financial services will be divided into sort of 3 things, which is front office, middle office, and back office. Okay. Front office generally to create revenue, as the slide says, all your products, business, sales, trading, strategies, risk appetite, everything will sit in the front. All the words that you see, if it relates to a revenue generation exercise, is front office. Front office does not mean a receptionist, which I thought I had an understanding before I went out globally. So get that. That's a term used usually, frontline or front office. That's what it means, that people bring in money into the organization. Middle office is really where risk sits. It's about management of the entire enterprise risk. That's why I mentioned E-risk, which is enterprise risk, and treasury. How much money has to be given to what department, how much money is being made, is the risk and reward being favorable, are we making money, are we making more risk? Risk does not mean that you do not do a business. Risk means that you weigh out the risk involved in doing that activity, and is it worth doing that or not, right? If it's not worth doing that, then you might just use that capital, that money, for something else, right? You guys are in MBA finance, you should know that better than me, right? Now, back office activities are all support activities. So legal, compliance, HR, technology, everything else. Anything that you can think of is all back office. And this is for the financial services. So any financial company, institution that has this kind of design. And this entire back office is a cost to the company, okay, to run. And whenever there is a reduction in profit and people have to be let go, or a change in strategy, pressure to your bottom line, you will often hear companies being told to let go of people or reducing staff, because that all back office is a cost to run the company, and that's where largely the job cuts happen. When you hear of job cuts for any sector, you can see this, and you can draw an image. Actually, I can give you this activity that any sector you pick up, wherever you see, especially because pandemic, you see a lot of people losing jobs. Where are the jobs going? Okay, that is the main area for any organization. So the risk actually, even though organization structure wise sits in the middle office, it cuts across the whole organization. So this is just the org structure, but the risk is at the origination of a client, till you sort of service the client, till the client ever exits you from a relationship perspective. You always carry risk, okay, for every transaction. So it's so much embedded. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I spent so much time in risk that I really valued the experience and exposure I got. I could understand the inside out of an organization just by looking at the risk data. It's that powerful because risk gets the entire organization's data, and from data you can definitely understand from a product perspective, policy perspective, risk appetite perspective. You know, there are different layers at which things are decided from a credit assessment perspective, credit decision perspective, credit execution perspective. And if what I'm talking about does not make sense, we can probably have another session on credit risk specifically, but risk cuts across everywhere. So let's say in a financial services activities, and before we started this call, Vishali told me that a lot of people have gone into taxation and in audit, right? So people who are auditing also, that's a great transferable support activity-based role that they're taking up because they'll get end-to-end understanding of an organization. Taxation is quite SME-specific roles, but financial services activities, whatever you do, they could fall in one of these activities. I mean, there are lots, they get different headlines. So lending is one, that's the biggest part. That's how the world moves in the financial services. You give money, you make money on that. Brokerage, broking in between two parties. Advisory is a lot, including your taxation and your auditing. That falls part of advisory. Risk forms a big part of advisory. Trading, again, risk is involved in trading as well. Trade finance as a specific, especially trade finance is taking a lot of heat because of the SME sector getting a lot of hit in pandemic. So if you are specifically, somebody asked me what specific skills we should need to, it really depends. I think it was Parul who asked, but trade finance or small and medium enterprise, how does lending and risk in that sector works? It's a really niche skill to have because I don't know if you know this, but SME sectors is sort of gives bread and butter to 98% of the population of the world. Okay? It's just 2.5% of the large institutional wholesale in organizations who employ. Largely people are employed by SME sector. However, they struggle close to 60 to 70% when they are in stress to get any sort of funding, right? So I think there's a lot of space in trade finance and in SME sector, especially for risk measurement for products. Again, going back to customer service journey, you know, how the SME sector's customers events or milestones are met through organizations, because microfinance I think does very well. They have sort of lower end of the SME sector, but SME is not very well catered to in the global financial market, I'm telling you. So there's a lot of job opportunities. Okay, then of course operational payment, cash management, a lot of risk in payments, right? Securities. If one SWIFT message goes wrong, your money will end up somewhere else. So a lot of risk over there. Investing and saving services. Then risk management itself is the financial services thing. Insurance is a completely ballgame together. I mean, it's a different giant altogether. So I mentioned that even though you have so many financial services, under these services you'll have jobs which will have tasks for you to be based upon core and transferable skills. You know how I'm driving you down to that point of your knowledge and skill. If you choose risk, it cuts across everything. You know, so it's one of those core areas where you learn a lot of vertical skills and a lot of horizontal skills. That's why I want to talk to you about risk in a very small and brief way. But somebody already has view on credit risk. Tito, I think. We'll see if we can talk about that in detail. Okay. So what have we learned today on this slide? Risk is everywhere and it's everyone's responsibility. You'll hear this every time you join a financial services company or an organization, you know, because I think in the last 35 odd years, especially since 2007, the perception around risk management has changed completely. Okay, there are more jobs in risk, by the way. So MBA Finance, yeah, we'll go and do FRM, Financial Risk Management, and then you're all set for a very, very meaty role within risk as of now. Okay. But it's one of those core skills that within the financial services or financial world, it's very important for you to understand what risk is, how it's measured, and how it's managed on an ongoing basis. And it's a service sector which creates a lot of job opportunities, and at the same time, it helps you build a lot of core SME capabilities. And SME capabilities means what? More money, right? Okay. Do I have any question here? Rahul Chandra, okay, let me read what is written. In financial work, okay, like investments, most people say that you should have an attitude of taking risk, but reduction in risk brings in the mindset of playing safe, which may result in lower level of learning in which, so how to differentiate between what should be done on the basis of technique. Okay. Rahul, let's say you go to an ocean, and it's just not a question to Rahul. You want to do diving. Okay, you have this fantastic capability. Somebody said, oh, if you go deep, take a deep dive, you can find, I don't know, let's call it Kohinoor, although it's lodged here in Tower of London Museum, but let's say you have to fetch up Kohinoor. Okay, so if Rahul, you can, or any one of you can really deep dive, go to the bottom of the ocean, you can fetch this. Now, Rahul does not have the core capability of diving, but he has got friends who have got the equipment and skills to teach him and probably help him, right? So Rahul decide, maybe I don't want anybody else to invest in my exploration, and I'll go and take a deep dive. So Rahul jumps to the bottom of the ocean. I don't know if he can swim that deep and ever come up. That's a risk you took without measuring it. It wasn't an unknown risk, but you took risk. That's called risk taking, but without measurement. That's called stupidity, right? So not personally to you, Rahul, I'm just taking your name and example, so don't feel that I'm pointing out at you. But this is how I would explain to myself. But let's say if I'm this person who's jumping, I would actually gather these friends and ask them how much deep can I go without the equipment? If I wanted the equipment to go much more deeper, how much the equipment will cost? What is at stake here? That's the risk, right? I'm measuring risk. How much money is required to go to the bottom? Can I do it alone? Do I need more people along with me? Do I need an ambulance sitting outside? And if I really fetch this Kohinoor, wow, that's a reward, and everybody gets piece of it. So from an investment perspective, we have investment strategies, risk models, investment models, everything being written every single day. Now the artificial algorithms are doing that for us, by the way. They are measuring reward versus the risk. When I said reduce the risk has got innumerous nature. There's a credit risk, there's a market risk, there's operational risk, there's legal risk, there's compliance risk, there's brand risk, so there's different varieties. But operational credit market, these are the main risks for which you need to put your capital aside. Let's say when you are an entity which is, so banking and financials are heavily regulated industry, our regulators will expect us to put some money aside. When you're putting the money aside for the amount of risk-weighted asset you're carrying on your banking book or trading book, you are putting that money aside for that whole year. You cannot touch it because the regulator asks you. So what's the reward? So your risk reward is here. If you know that this money you have lent is not fetching you equal return, your return on investment is poor, you would want to give that money to somebody else where you get bigger return. Same activity, same Kohinoor at the bottom of the ocean, different people to fetch it. I would rather invest to an industry or a company which gives him better return that can actually get the Kohinoor from the bottom of the ocean. I would not give that money to somebody who just claims to be going to the bottom of the ocean, but takes this money, I don't know, goes and watch some movie with a girlfriend. I'm just saying that. So that's a difference, that due diligence is really required for risk. And risk is a double-sided sword. So you need to know why you are investing money in order to make more money. And risk is that lens for you to make that, because the bank has got enough of that pot of money which has to be given away. If you are not measuring the depth of your known risk, right? I think you study this in this theory of utility, right? In economics, that you you have to measure what you're giving away in order to learn, earn more money. If it's not measured against something, it's all in fluff. So that's why so many chit fund company and all these small time traders, they all just go up belly up, isn't it? Because they're not catered for the risk. But I don't know if that answers your questions, but I'll move on to the next one. If I haven't, you can ask towards the end of the session, okay? There you go, it goes hand in hand. Okay. So I wanted you to have a little bit of sort of small view on digital and artificial intelligence, because these are the big buzzwords. Now you may think, oh, hang on, I've done MBA finance, I'm going to work in a financial services industry, and all this sounds tech, so I don't really need to know about it, right? But as Rimmer has it, everybody in the front line is supposed to know about these days, be at least skilled in something about it, at least need to hold a conversation and understand what's happening, because very soon you might be at a junction where it may, and I would use a big may, it may threaten your ability to make a living, okay? So hang in there. We fear something which we don't understand, and we sort of, we go on a witch hunting to sort of end it, you know, this is how human psychology works. But we need to understand that we have reached a stage where we operated in a way where we didn't really value the data that we held. Going back to the initial conversation of 200 odd years of the industry, we have really only started our baby steps in making monetary benefits out of the data we hold. I think I was reading the information today morning that one of these chambers of commerce or something in India says that only 30% of the organizations in India are actually focusing on digitalization. So I think it's, we don't want to be caught up in a place where people think, you know, it's a bit like ostrich's head in the sand, where we think, oh, it's not going to happen. Oh, you know what? We have got enough people to work, so where will they go and all. That's fine, but that's not going to stop things to move ahead, because the exponential growth of technology is making things easier, and there's a value in doing things in an easier way. And you as an organization is not driving that. Your customers are driving that change. So that change is being thrown at you. And I say you as an organization, whatever organization you work, let's say you work at Deloitte, or you work at BNP Paribas, or you work at JP Morgan, you work at SBI, wherever you work, guys, the basic expectation of your customers, whether retail or wholesale, anywhere, any wealth, private, any kind of sector of your customer, is that you run the core capability of digital and artificial intelligence. That's the thing. You know, there was a time, like, it's a bad example, but people used to say, if my son is an engineer, I must get at least a Maruti car in the dowry. Bad example. No, I don't support dowry, but that was the expectation. So now people have got mobile phones, laptops, PDAs, screen, all screen time. My basic, I basically need one device and a connectivity to the internet, and I should be able to do my stuff on the screen. That's why digital and AI is really important. So what am I going to talk about? 3 things. Very important to understand the data. The data currently exists in different realms. So one is the non-digital, and the second is the digital. And then there's a context to it. So a lot of organizations are going through. So you might be joining an organization where you might get a project or a piece of work, or you'll hear some of your friends or teams working on digitization, which is essentially converting a non-digital data into a data, which means is I could be having a piece of paper, it's got some data, and so far everybody in the organization was looking at the piece of paper. Now they can have the same information on the screen, access through a server into a database, as simple as that. 40-year-old word converted into a new word called digitized. That's all it means. Digital transformation, however, is when you digitize a piece of information of your organization. You go paper-free, hands-free, okay, everything is on the screen. Now I'm going to connect this information and provide it to people who need it the most. My customer, my internal employees, people who are bringing more revenue, people who reduce risk, people who reduce cost, people who are running projects, everybody, my vendors. That digital transformation is what is driving of funneling of huge growth in the financial services. Every bank is undergoing a state of change where they are trying to convert themselves into being more digital so that they can give a better customer experience. Customers fueling it, remember that? So if there are companies who sort of want to hold on to old archaic ways of doing things, they will be just abandoned by their customers sooner or later, unless they go really, really competitive on their prices. And I'm not sure how they will run with those competitive prices without being digital. So it's like a two-way street, you know. You can't go this way if you can't go that way, that sort of thing. Artificial intelligence, why artificial? I always think, yeah, we use it as a term called artificial intelligence because the intelligence already exists in our transactional information or data in the organization, but we want somebody else to be doing it, which is not human. So that's why we write these lines of codes, which in our earlier fancy languages used to call programs. Now these are more automated in nature. They run on certain rules. They have been fine-tuned, and they have come to exist to know as algorithms. And these algorithms are probability-based programs, which means the highly likeliness of it being correct. And they run in the sort of range of anywhere between 90 to 100%. So when you say an artificial intelligence is running to make a decision, it's a highly probabilistic game. It's not always true. So there is a bias, there is a space for error, there is a mispronunciation or misunderstanding of the data itself. The machine learning used at the back end of taking these decisions could be the supervised learning or unsupervised learning. And if it's unsupervised, then it's at least very, very naive and nascent at the stage. So a lot of financial services are not going to unsupervised world. So you will hear a term, and you can write this down. You'll hear a term called Explainable AI. And that is gaining a lot of momentum. It's a bit like climate change, you know. It's like everybody wants to know about it because artificial intelligence essentially means that a lot of decisions will be taken without explaining why those decisions are being taken, because that's how the algorithms are designed to work at a quantum of speed with a cloud computing capability. And we don't want everybody to be relooking into those decisions. That's why we're employing the algorithms to do that work much, much faster. But the back of this, there is intelligence in it, you will think. So any task, going back to the jobs that you take, any task that takes from going from point A to point B, let's say I need to enter this data, and then this data needs to be reconciled to a physical evidence of what the information should be. I don't know if it's, let's say it's an invoicing system that you're looking at, you know, think of a small example. Somebody was doing it manually earlier. This is not so much fun. Whoever was doing must be thinking, oh my God, what I was signed up for. I did my MBA finance and look what I'm doing. So you would want to deploy artificial intelligence to be able to reiterate this process and fine tune it to the nth degree that it can run without a human intervention. Any process that from A to B can be done within few seconds of human thinking should be used by machine learning under artificial intelligence to improve the outcome. Going back to someone who mentioned about risk and amount, this reduces your risk, this reduces your cost of running the services. Cost of having a human doing this administrative task is high than actually being done by machine. But if you are at the front line in an organization where you do credit analysis of the profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow of an organization to able to decide its ability for credit lending, there's a lot of things happening here. A lot of tasks happening simultaneously, a lot of interjuxtaposed decisions, a huge amount of thinking time at a human level, and hence those activities should not be touched immediately in the immediate future. So those kind of jobs are actually safe. And there's a lot of conversation about whether we should be actually deploying artificial intelligence in all realms in the world. Now, there are platforms and products brought in by a lot of companies. I work with a company who are into credit process lending platform, complete overhaul, where the machine learning does a lot of stuff, a lot of cool niche stuff. But still, there are certain activities that have to be done by human beings. And those activities are actually the ones that you have been taught about. For example, in your MBA finance, you are doing so much of understanding, finer tuning your knowledge, right? And you should be looking at an outcome from a machine in order to make a critical judgment. Let's say you are a credit analyst, you should be making a critical judgmental decision based upon the information provided by the computer, not the other way around. So when you get into an organization, I don't want you to get scared by thinking, oh, the robots are coming up and taking up our job. That's not true. That's just a fluff, that's like a conversation which bubbles up and people just misinterpret. It's a bit of a misinformation. But most organizations undergo that change because of the acute computational power of the cloud, the data lakes of 40, 50 years of history of a data into different databases. Oh, let's create a data lake, let the data talk to each other, provide a platform for us to interact with the data, get some insights from the platform, put it in the cloud to be quickly available, help design microservices. Microservices means small programs, very small lines of codes, which can be tweaked and uploaded into a serviced environment without making an enormous change to the entire product. It's different from the monolithic structure that you used to have in IT earlier. And IoT, which is Internet of Things. That is, if you have a machine, you have an internet connection, everything should be able to talk to each other, what the services you want. Doesn't matter. It's agnostic of the sector you're operating in. By the way, whatever I'm talking about is true to every other sector on this planet, including defense, by the way. Okay. So because the digital and artificial intelligence is bringing in this three-pronged approach of high computational power, because so much of data is there, that's why you need high computational power. The artificial intelligence makes decision making easier, that's why it's going to exponentially increase. And the customer's expectation is to be out there. 5 superpowers of cloud technology. I think you should read a little bit about cloud technology. I'm sure you are going to do in this course or have done, or in your previous life you have experienced. If not, go and do a small course on it. You just read something online. It's really important because cloud technology does these 5 things. It helps you collaborate. It creates perception about certain things. Then you throw it out in your community of users, and you get a very good feedback back about what you're intending to do. So it's a bit like, how I think in marketing, and Professor Vishali will be more useful than me to talk about how you run campaigns to get a feel of what you could do with your company, right? Then you can do categorization of information, recommendation systems, prediction analogies, all these capabilities. Yes, they exist currently without cloud, but they are not on one platform. That's the difference of cloud. They help you, make you do it. And based upon this, the organizations need not underwrite a lot of their cost of information technology. The cost is going down. Going back to the first slide, cost is going down. That's why cloud is going up. If this was very expensive to deploy cloud, banking and financial industry won't be doing it. So we are doing it because the cost is low. Okay, end of discussion. Learn from the data. The data will not going to leave you. If whatever field you go, the data will not leave you. That's the world we live in. So learn to like it. Learn to read a little bit about it. I don't want you to think about from a technical capability. If you don't have a bent of mind, or if you don't want to, you can still be an analyst and you don't have to do things technically. But you in your job, you will go through data at any job. Okay. So pretend to be a little bit technical, even if you aren't. It helps sometimes. Okay. So I just want to understand I think I'm going to overshoot my time, but you guys are going to enter a workforce at a very interesting time. So without having to define more, how do you think you will safeguard yourself against the misinformation and manipulation, given your jobs will depend a lot on data and information? And I'll repeat my question. How do you think you're going to safeguard yourself against the misinformation and manipulation, especially at work, given your job actually depends upon a lot of data and information? Let me know if the question is not clear. Let's give ourselves 2 minutes of time, and if anybody has any views, I'd like to hear them. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, I have allowed you people to talk. So if you have a question, you can also always speak also.
Right. I think I would like to start if anybody has any view on this, so that we can give at least to more than 2 to 3 people to say if they want to say something.
Again, Tirtho has mentioned it in the chat box. So he's writing how feasible to change domain in finance field.
How to change domain in finance field.
Hmm.
Tirtho, can you expand on this question? So your domain is finance, right? Every economic profit related activity in the financial services will need finance. So when you say finance, are you talking to me about accounting finance? Because I understand finance is a very wider term. But when you say yeah.
So basically, my question is related to how feasible to change the domain. Like, if I get into the financial product services at the very first of my career, as you have said, nothing is like unput down. We can like get some experience from that also.
Yep.
But then again, if we want to change our domain into something else, like if we go into capital market, if we go get into equity research or the project finance domain. So how much it will be feasible? Because nowadays everything is so much in the like, race. It's a race.
No, I understood your question now, Tirtha. So the world is a stage, Tirtha. You can go from anywhere. So I'll tell you. So I started my career as a software developer in markets technology. I used to design, develop, and support systems that helped in capital markets and treasury and frontline trading. I was a developer. I moved into business. Then I moved to private wealth Asia as a domain. Okay, so I'm talking in your terms how you asked the question, and I learned how structured products and the wealth related products are traded, and they have a different kind of life cycle. What and how are mutual funds, and how they are used for H&WI category of customers. And then I moved from there to something called DMDI, which is a part of actually risk, which is decision model design and implementation. I started doing model validation. I never developed models, but I did model validation. And I went into designing a credit metrics system for measuring the credit metrics for the bank. So my stakeholder was the CRO of the bank. From there on, I did enterprise data analytics. So I had the whole bank's data, and I developed financial crime assurance platform for it, liquidity accuracy for treasury. Okay, inter-domain conversation were happening, retail modeling, wholesale modeling, frontline data analysis. The task that you take to do a certain job would have more than one domain more than often. You need to be clever to understand that this can be lifted and applied in another domain. Are you with me? So when you do the job, let's say this is the job, what you're doing here is applicable in more than one domain. So when you, let's say you're doing, you mentioned a couple of things. Let's say you are from equity research and you want to get into credit derivatives, let's say, or frontline trading. Sometimes, because we are a heavily regulated industry, we will have instances for you to do some CPD. On some CPDs is continuous professional development points, so that you know what you're doing, and you will sometimes have to have some sort of certification, which is under the flagship of the regulator in the industry that you're operating in, to say that yes, you could do. For example, in UK, a lot of professional financial services will not allow one particular domain to go and, let's say, give financial advice unless you're a certified financial advisor. Now that depends upon the maturity of the economic country you're operating in. Okay, I would just want to be clear with that. So if that is the case, then as per compliance, you could do those courses to say, yes, I understand the risks involved and I'm able to do it. But other than that, you should be easy to slate from one domain to another. So you enter a bank or a financial services to learn different aspects of that industry. Industry is a huge word. A lot of things are being done to make a bank a bank. So you don't think of it. So this is like job specific thinking to say, oh, I just want to be in credit derivatives, or I want to be in equities, or I want to be in insurance, or I want to be in wealth, or markets, or capital markets, treasury. These things are interrelated. After, if you really said that, oh, you know what, I want to be a biohacker, and then I want to go into a cryptocurrency, then I want to be a photographer, and then I want to come back as a banker. In the wildest dream, that is a possibility as well. But that is a very, very, like, it's an outlier case. But what you just spoke about is easily doable. Just don't go in a job with the thing that if you get into a job does not mean you're going to do that for lifetime. Don't. You won't. Trust me. That's why I said do a job 2.5 to 3 years maximum, then shift. By shifting, I did not mean shift the companies. Sometimes you get a lot of variety of doing different kinds of jobs long term in one organization. But yes, of course, there's lots of things that depends upon whether you stick with a company or not. But it is easier to shift within an organization between different interdepartments than outside. It is also easier to shift externally if you have a great network. Does it make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so my question was that how will you safeguard against misinformation and manipulation given your life, not your life, your job depends upon it?
Yeah, so Nidhi, one student, Shankul, has answered it in the chat option. I don't know if you can see the chat, if it is visible to you.
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Yeah, so Shankul and Rahul, they both have mentioned, and I saw Vikas also raising his hand. I don't know, Vikas, if you wanted to ask something, or if it was by mistake, Vikas Kumar Roy. But Shankul and Rahul have mentioned something in the chat box. Probably you would like to read it.
Yeah, I'm reading Shankul. I'm going to safeguard myself from manipulation by not just listening to and believing in that particular information, but analyzing and understanding from my point of view and finally realize which side of my bread is buttered. Excellent. Shankul, Rahul, just like system of assets in which monkey makes more money, similarly accumulated data can be designed in an algorithm in which recorded data helps us analyze safeguards and against it. That's a very a machine could do it, Rahul, but a machine can also get in some biases, or a machine could be based upon data which is actually, there's no integrity in the data, so you might end up with the wrong outcome. But yeah, Shankul says thank you. No worries, Shankul, you're welcome. So see, I threw this question and I'm not expecting an immediate answer from you. I'm just wanted to understand your thinking process. So I don't want any bookish answers to it. It's really to tell you that, because I've seen it so much in my work, especially with crime being all-time high in terms of data. So when you are analyzing, so let's say you're analyzing a profit and loss and balance sheet or a cash flow statement for a customer, and you really don't know if it is cooked. Yeah, the auditors will come once in a year and probably do their due diligence, right? But when you are looking at information, you will just believe on what you get. So keep your hindsight high, actually. Question everything. Otherwise, you will be very gullible to a lot of naive information thrown at you. That's why companies like, I don't know if anybody of you aspires to go into credit rating agencies. If you do, it's a great grounding place for you to build up your career, because you then rely on a lot of information which is being mined by these rating agencies and not really available easily in the public domain. Okay, so that's what I wanted you to understand. Okay, my screen is blinking. I don't know if somebody has said something. Okay, let me just click on this. Okay, all right, so let me just go back quickly to where we were. Thanks for answering. From the digital asset point of view, I want you to be aware of this again. I don't know when and how you get to this information, but because you're doing a very specific course, you need to also understand how the industry itself is changing. It's no more going to be just finance. It's becoming very fintech in its nature, and the reason behind this drive is right here. So this is the data chart from Cipher.ai, which shows number of patents since 2017. This is largely around banks in US, Europe, and Asia. And the US banks are all more patent savvy than the European banks, especially the region I operate in. And then I'll show you another picture of how the banks or the financial companies are doing against the IT companies and why fintech is taking the world by a storm. So this is what the banks protect. These are the number of patents with these companies. So you say Bank of America is leading the stack, especially in banking IT infrastructure. That's like the back end, the cost, right? So they're reducing the cost of servicing their client by investing more in their bank IT infrastructure, and hence increasing the return on investment. Then the online banking, the mobile banking is another space where there's a lot of innovation, technical innovation happening. Transaction and data processing another, because it's quite humongous, and especially a lot of transaction data processing AI is being used. So if you join this kind of sector of the industry, you will see there are a lot of technology driven processes are being done. Okay, so if you see Bank of America alone has got 2,535 patents. It's huge, guys. To compare that with other banks, look, BNP's got 1 patent. That also they must have just stumbled upon, I think. So then JP Morgan Chase, of course, is leading at 509. Wells Fargo has a lot of issues with them. RBC is, I don't know, it's doing pretty sadly on this. But these are some of the banks, right, in US and Europe. But that's just true. So I used this in one of the sessions with the European banks, and they were like, "Oh, US banks are not better than us." And I showed them this. Look, this is what the data says. The data speaks. So they had, they were misinformed, and they had a manipulation of their emotional response to it. But I showed them data, and then if you go and see, so this is IBM. Okay, IBM alone in the banking and IT infrastructure has got more than 9,000 patents. That's why IBM as a company is not threatened. You will never hear stories about IBM being threatened by the Facebooks and the Apples and other companies. They are a very niche company. Look at the number of patents they have in online and mobile banking, especially in transaction data processing. They are 5 times more than the total banks. So this 4,697 is from the total from previous slide. Okay, see the difference. So if IBM tomorrow intends to become the bank, it might as well just do it, because they have been servicing the banks for such a long time, and they have been using the technology to do it much better and patenting those technologies. When you patent a technology, it's like a royalty you make earning on every time somebody uses it, right? So technology companies understand the role of intellectual property, which is IP, associated with protecting themselves in the market. The banks have never did that, you know. So the financial service sector realizing, oh, even though we are the financial companies of the world, we have got the people with us who we bank with. It's the IT companies who are actually patenting the systems that we're using, right? So that's why the financial service sector is feeling a heat, and that's why they want to go be ahead in digital and AI, and they want to partnership. They want to spin off some part of their business as a fintech, financial tech company, that's short form, or want to join hands with the IBMs and the Microsoft and the Google. You know, Microsoft Azure is being used for cloud. Google GPS is being used, platform services. So that is why it's happening, because these companies, you see, are much way ahead of patenting. And what does patenting do? You know, it increases your asset value. So it becomes very difficult for, let's say, a bank to tomorrow decide and acquire IBM. I don't know, maybe Goldman or a JP Morgan Chase could do it. But you see the value it brings. And when your customer is highly digitally savvy or well connected, it makes all the more difference. So you are in an industry where you need to be up ahead a little bit, at least on the technical front. That does not mean that you need to be a coder. That only means that you need to understand what's happening. Okay, be aware, right? Okay, so now we just looking at the time. Okay, Vishali, how am I doing with the time?
You're doing great. I think probably we have last 10 minutes with us, and
Okay.
we can use it for both Q&A, and if you have some last piece of
Yeah, no, I'll
information
go
to
through
share
this
with me.
quickly. So 3
Right.
books you should read in finance, guys, and we'll share this PDF, so you don't need to take notes. But if you have not read, if you want to understand resources, Limits to Growth is the book. It's a very old book. Read it. You will get it easily online on a PDF format. You can download. You need not even have to buy. The Wealth of Nations, written by Adam Smith, is another great book. If you want to be in the financial services and want to understand history and economy and why we do the things that we do and why we measure the way we do, I think this is a great book to read. For machine learning, this is my all-time favorite book by Pedro Domingos, which is talking about a master algorithm in the quest of ultimately finding a algorithm. I don't know if you've seen the movie called The Theory of Everything. This book is a technical spin-off of that understanding of theory of everything, you know, where everything, there's one theory or one theorem as such which can explain everything else. And we are getting very closer to that concept. So when I said technically you need to be savvy, reading this book gives you a bit of an edge on understanding things from a non-technical perspective. Okay, right. Very quickly, I want to talk to you about brand equity. Yeah, very happy-go-lucky screen here. And at a very personal level. So I'm sure you understand what brand equity is. But I want to understand from you from your own personal perspective as to where do you think you are? So, you know, when you are getting ready to be in a job, getting into a career, make some money, standing on your feet, there's so many things at stake here. And you're always looking forward to others to give you direction, to sort of learn from others. But very soon when you cross your college life, that rug gets pulled away from you and you're on your own a lot. So there are times where you need to have a lot of faith in yourself and really need to think about where you place yourself. So every time you make a decision, what I really do to myself, so I'm sharing this with you, is think about this question. Would you invest in yourself if you're a brand? Because you constantly are investing or buying things which are of a certain brand, right? And I'm sorry if you're not a very brand savvy person, which is great actually. If you just buy something, what do you find? But the world is usually accustomed to investing in a particular brand. So you are your own brand, remember that. So once you get on this journey of getting into a job, making money, getting stabilized in your career, focus on yourself, okay? Don't focus on others. The childhood time is over when we used to run in a race and used to see on whose spoon that potato or I don't know white rasgulla is kept, and you know you're always looking at others, you know what other person is doing. That creates a lot of anxiety, guys. So you need to get out of that culture. Even if now you're writing exams, you're doing some thesis, you're doing some projects, and oh, what is the other person doing? Get out of that mentality. It helps you in the long run. You've got 20 years of education in which you followed that model. When you start living your professional life, you need to start investing in yourself. Okay, so we discuss a few things about be well informed in what you do. Take responsibility for yourself, not for others, for yourself first. You start with yourself first, okay? Save money, hugely important, especially from the country that we come in. It's really important. It helps you have a very well-grounded safety net, and you will see that this will leverage you in different global roles if you do, if you have this mindset. This is not just personal, I'm saying professionally you'll grow if you save money, because you will develop a psychology of having a safety net. Okay, so you want to go jump into the bottom of the ocean to fetch Kohinoor, and take risks, definitely. Have money to do that. Have an equipment, put an oxygen mask, get down, take some lessons, okay? That kind of thing. Invest in yourself. Practice humility. The world is becoming really a nasty place. You don't want to live in that place, right? When you spend 8 to 9 hours in an office working with others, you need to be a little bit humble, a little bit generous, a little bit kind to yourself as well as to others. Practice it with yourself first. Learn to be very, very humble with yourself, you know? Especially in the world of Facebook, a lot of beating around the chest happens. That creates psychology where you have somebody, I'm sure in psychology will take you through this, an alter ego, where you think you forget what life you're living versus what you think you're living. Okay, build your network, professional as well as personal. Everything is not for money, fame, work, career. Okay, personally you should have at least one person to talk to. You are happy, you share it. You are sad, feeling low, anxious, anxiety, feeling let down, feeling like breaking your head, go and talk to someone. It's a really poor planning in terms of your career if you don't have a network. Networking does not mean always getting something from someone. Networking means be able to, willing to give to others, to show that sharing is caring, being there for others. That's when you attract the right kind. So the kind of people you want to attract in your network, you be that kind. You cannot be this person who is so self-centered, so closed, yet want to be networking with others. And I'm not talking about a personality type if you're introvert or extrovert. That's not what this is about. Okay? When you network, you need to be open to be sharing with others. And that's when you start attracting others. If you have a hobby, don't let go of it. I don't know, you play a guitar, you play chess, you play, you dance, you do anything. I don't know, you just sit and write poems. Whatever, guys, whatever you run, you're in theater, you like to just while away time. That's also a very, very good hobby, actually, just to while away time to think. If you have had a childhood passion, I think this is a good time, especially for the batch who's just come into this. You must be geared to do, oh, I have to MBA finance, I have to get FARU scores, and I need to just make it to the top of the class. Remember, you got a hobby and you keep up with that. Don't let go of that, because in your long-term career, this is what you fall back on. This is your plan B. When plan A is not going correct, this is what you do to keep your mental stability, to reduce the stress in life. It's very important. You'll not get coached on this. Nobody will tell you this. I'm just letting you know straight away that when things are not going in your favor, you fall back on the things that you enjoy the most. Okay? Take a break. If you're a foodie, take a break. It's like giving a detox to your guts, like how we say we do fasting. I'm not professing anything to you. I'm just saying, this is why fasting came into existence, detox yourself from the body. From certain habits, if you have any annoying habits, try to dislodge yourself and see if you can live without them. I don't know, maybe let's say you are an excessive smoker, try to walk away from that for a few days. Try to see if you feel something differently. Technology especially, we spend so much time online, always plugged in. So you do the three things, right? You interact with sort of people using your online capabilities, right? And you interact with the cloud, which is like all these social websites, right? Um, so you are actually interacting with the AI bot at the background at Facebook or Instagram, and then you also have a me time, your own time alone, and then you keep switching between these three activities, right? So when you have some time, you really want to do this. Give yourself an activity in terms of how much me time, how much you interact with other humans, and how much time you spend online, and you write wake up hours, how much time do I spend on this, and as a percentage of that, just rate it between 1 to 10, 1 being very poor, 10 being very great, as to how does it make you feel. Does spending time with your own self make you feel really 10 out of 10? Do that more. Okay, you have to reduce your cloud and online presence and all that, because it sort of reduces your focus, and in the industry that you're in, you need a lot of focus. A lot of people get burnt out in working in this space because you just do not have the capacity to focus, to bring in value to work. You'll hear this conversation so often: I want people who bring in value at work. And you will just fall miserably if you cannot just focus on what you're doing. And to be able to focus, just detox. Okay, move away from everything that keeps you online, always connected. You're not a machine. Machines are connected. You don't have to connect to the machine as well. Okay, health and exercise. Not going to beat the drum around it. So I have a huge personal story about it. Probably take 30 seconds on it. Is I've not been great in terms of health. I used to work very long hours, global roles, waking up at an ungodly hour, sleeping at an ungodly time. Took a toll on my health. My stress levels went up. So I did undo myself from that, and I realized in the long term that health is very important. So just take it from me, from somebody who's experienced it. When you start work life is just one part of your existence. Make sure your health and exercise take precedence as well, because this is how in other part of the world. Okay, in India we may overlook it sometimes, or only when mommy and papa remind us, then we listen to our health and we exercise a bit when we think we are putting on weight, because we are very conscious around what other people think of. But don't go by that. Just think about yourself on your own. Okay, if now I go to job and tasks that you're taking up, reduce aversion to ambiguity to get ahead in life, because a lot of time you will not know. There'll be so many unknowns in the things that you take up. Don't be afraid of taking them up, because you just do not know everything. You cannot be taught everything from day one of starting a job. So be very mindful of that. Everybody goes through it. You don't have to fake it to show, oh, I know everything, because I think that's when you fatally make a mistake. Be open to learning things, but do not have an aversion to things that you don't know. You don't want to take a deep plunge, because you never know what you can come across. Okay, invest in yourself like your life depends on it, because it does. If you, like I asked you the first question, would you invest in yourself if you were a brand? Think always like that. I don't take up those things that I think others find me interesting or important for me to do, but I don't think I want to do them. I never do that. And it took me years to reach that state, but that's how I operate now. I only do things that I think I should be doing, because this is my life. I don't want to live on terms of others defining it for me. Okay, personally as well as professionally. So take charge of your life, basically, right? Because you are the one who has to live your life, right? Nobody else. Everybody else has their own life. You manage yours, they will manage theirs. We spend a lot of time thinking about what others are thinking about us. From a game theory perspective, that's great, but you don't have to do it on an everyday basis. Remember? Okay. Now, this is almost towards the end of it. Now, if you have a career, obviously, at some point you will face a failure. Earlier, later, repeatedly, there's no frequency-based event, that says, oh, these many number of times you'll fail when you start a career. You'll fail quite often. Now, there's almost a jingo about it saying fail fast in order to be a success. Fintech companies apply that garage mindset. But facing failure is basically about when because you're in so much in the habit of bragging about, oh, everything is going well. You know, when somebody asks, how are you? You always say, okay, I'm fine. Maybe you're not, right? So it's a bit about thinking as to how you want to project yourself, right? So I want you to stop thinking of projecting yourself. I want to think internally as to when you face a failure. Let's say you lost a job, you did not have a great interview. You were thinking you'll get a job, but you did not. Somebody else got a job who you don't like, so you feel very jealous about it. That's a failure that creates stress to a lot of people, you know. Now, this is what I want you to remember. This image is how we act, you know. If we try to, our system around us is designed to do maximization of profit. And how do you attain maximization of profit is, people should be more knowledgeable, they should be earning more income, and hence more in these directions. But in the long term, if you have more knowledge, then you should also find more meaningness in it, right? That's a long-term view of knowledge. The short-term view is, if you want to keep increasing income, you may also want to have a little bit of more fun about it, because that's immediate short-term. You get a hike in a salary or a change in job, and or maybe you have you spend more time, I don't know, playing on some video games, because that's what you do after your job is over. It could be anything. You could be maximizing your profit for the company that you work for. But how do you maximize your happiness is more important. You should do more meaningful work, and it should have more fun in the long run to be happy. Because we have so much disconnect, you will continue to face failures. So when you face failures, that's the first thing you need to remind yourself, that it's not about you. It's about the system designed around us. Everybody goes through failure. Nobody has the courage to talk about it. So what should you do? Few guidance principles to you. Headspace is a great app. Everybody has a phone. If you do not know, or if you do not do meditation, I really want you to think about it. Okay, I've got a question here. Sorry. Sorry, I missed this question, Satik. Is investing in Bitcoin the same idea? Satik, I'm not giving any financial advice here, so I'll refrain from answering that question, especially in the country that I'm sitting in. I shouldn't be doing that. But my personal view is that I don't understand Bitcoins, so I don't invest in them. The underlying asset, if I don't understand and if I don't value it, I don't invest in it. Okay, so I could give a parallel theory of everything becoming battery based on this planet, right? In order to reduce our footprint on carbon emission, maybe you should invest in lithium, right? Lithium is a natural resource. Again, it's mined, although it's got a lot of I would say it's blood money. I would say a lot of countries like Congo and all go through a lot of tough time getting it mined from their place, and there's a lot of child labor and slavery involved. But if you can mine lithium, because there's a limited amount on the planet, it's again like oil or gold, you could make more money. But that's an example I'm giving you. So if I was thinking between Bitcoin and lithium, that's what my view will be. I'm not a frontline portfolio investing person, so I don't give financial advice. But I don't personally like the concept of Bitcoin. I like the cryptocurrency concept totally. I understand that there's a paradigm, but because there's so much of financial crime around it and the dark net that fuels the demand for it. So I understand more behind scenes. I come from a risk background, so I really refrain from indulging into that. It's a bit like indulgence, you know. It's a bit like, you know, how people indulge in cannabis. I would actually compare it with that. If you don't understand, you don't know how to control, you will burn your fingers in it. It's a bit like that. But if you know how to take it in moderate case, you might be able to sail through. Okay. Right, going back to Headspace, it's an app. You can Google any of the phones. I think both Android and iPhone will have it. So I think 1 month is free, then there's a very cheap subscription. That actually teaches you how to do meditation. I learned through Headspace. If you have another guru to teach you meditation, go ahead, do that. But meditation is something that I think everybody in financial world should learn, because I think there's so much you go through that you need to declutter your brain in order to deal with a failure, right? because otherwise you will not know how to go ahead from the mess you're in. And there's an interesting book called This Book Will Make You Mindful. That's the name of the book itself. So maybe you can read that. I don't know if you've got a library, maybe your institute can buy it and then get you guys reissued. It's a cheap book. It's not a very expensive book. There's another book that I like, which is the Circadian Code. That's really important book, guys. Now, ignore the principle that it says lose weight, because I'm not telling you to lose weight or gain weight. Weight is not an issue conversation here, but to supercharge your energy and understand how well you sleep the night and the next day, how much valuable it is to you, especially in the long run for your life. It's really important book. Especially the kind of life we live in today's world, with everything related to our gadgets and late nights and all the time watching some of your screen. I really changed my lifestyle after reading this book. So, and I was really I was looking into a well when I did that. So it's worth reading some of these books, which normally don't get discussed about, right? Social media now. So this is an interesting book, Alone Together, Why We Expect More from Technology and Less from Each Other. This will teach you an ability to network. I think it's a very eye-opener book for me. If you get time, just have a read of this book. And again, I don't know if you have a library and if this can be facilitated, but it will be really valuable. So what I'm trying to do here is telling you, develop different ways to develop a psychological safety around yourself. You are great. You need not undervalue yourself. But if you get a failure, you should have the framework around it to get over it. It's not the end of the road. It's not end of life. The stress levels worldwide are so high these days that people just think and take very drastic steps. And I want you to be fully aware of that the industry, especially in the financial world, is reeling under its sort of impact. So find yourself a psychological safety in somebody who you can talk to, find a mentor, read books, get some apps, go exercise. That's the best way to get out of a thing that you have sort of failed in. You're not a child anymore that you can go back to the warmth of your mommy and papa and then they will give you a hug and everything will be fine. You have to manage a lot of things and then you go up with a brave face next day to work again. So how do you build up your resilience? You need to build it one layer at a time, and it takes a longer time to do that. Okay. So have the courage to be vulnerable. Okay, this is what quickly I'll share what I do with. I watch less, I read and listen more, because I think that's how I understand better things. This is what I just wanted to mention, because I want you to know that you have a life beyond work. So I like comedy, so I like to listen to these guys. These are just some of my top 5 comedians that I listen to. When I'm having a hard time, I probably just tune up to them and listen to them or watch their shows in person or wherever I can, do that. So have something parallelly going on in your life. Find something that gives you joy, that lightens you, that you can have a very good laugh at, because that releases cortisol and reduces your stress levels. So that's a very scientific way of being lightheaded. You can't carry too much in here. There's a very small capacitor here. Stress is something that does not look, feel, and measure, but it takes up a lot of space in your head. Okay. These are the podcasts that I would really sort of suggest you to read. No, I'm running out of time. But somebody mentioned that somebody got a job at Goldman Sachs. Exchanges at Goldman Sachs is a very good podcast, very insightful, very high level view of things on how to connect the dots. I really like 99% Invisible and 1, 3, and 20. I don't listen to them all of them all the time, but I plug in and out of them sometimes when I want to listen. And I got into the habit of podcasts and audible books because my travel time used to be high, and I've still continued to sort of stay with them, even though I don't commute now because of pandemic. But yeah, that's a great way to sort of keep yourself, learn things in a quicker, shorter span of time. For everything, you cannot go into an university and get an education. Some things you have to learn very fast. And I learn very good things from comedian, because I think they're very sharp in their satire and critical of things. So they throw in things that you would not have thought of. And I think people in financial services must listen to comedians. can get great investment strategies, really. And podcasts, somebody earlier I was interacting with in terms of investment strategies. I'll just go back. I think it was, Satik Mohanta had asked that. Satik, you will get a lot of insights on investment strategies from the exchanges at Goldman Sachs. Okay. I think I've got another question here. Yeah, Satik, Headspace is similar to Calm. I think Calm came much later than Headspace, and Calm is expensive as well in terms of. Yeah, but I think I haven't tried both. Ellen too, Satik Mohan, yes, Ellen too, Ellen DeGeneres, I really love her. She's really funny. Even our, Indian comedians, regional comedians, I didn't put those names, but maybe a lot of people do not know them, but I listen to a lot of, I'm one of those persons that, let's say if I was in Bangalore, I would just go into one of these pubs and go and listen to people who are in comedy clubs. Vishali, you have to say something?
No, I think probably we have the 5 more minutes.
Yeah, good. I'm done. Yeah, 5 more minutes. Okay.
Yeah. So if there are some last minute questions, if people want to ask, there is so much which you've shared. I know it is, and just in terms of keeping it only for 1.5 hours or so, it's so much.
I know. So I think just, I said just network and things that I especially learned from these engaging podcasts and comedies, different things like these are all burning things that I have sort of learned more from them rather than books. And then I go and dig into books. So if you want to learn about these things, these podcasts are a really great place, guys. I think that's what I'll say. So do we have any questions so far? Okay. So I think, this is the last thing I want to share with you. Some books that I want you to probably skim through and read if you feel like. I spoke about culture, understanding culture. The 2 books, Power of Nunchi and Finding Sisu. This is interesting books to read if you're working in the Asian market or the European market. Then if you are you're looking for job hunting, this What Color Is Your Parachute is one of the most phenomenal book that I have ever read, and I have actually applied some of those fundamental things. And somebody, I think Tirtho asked how you change within the domains, that kind of conversation is held very well by this book, Tirtho. So if you can take note of. Then Nassim Nicholas Taleb, especially because in financial world, these 2 books, Black Swan and Skin in the Game, probably too early for you to read, but I think in 2 to 3 years, just have a read about these 2 books, because you'll find a lot of value in it. I'm not just proposing some books to you because I wanted to. I think these are really incredible books. Then this How Psychology Works, this is a book by Joe Hemmings. It's a pictorial representation of all the existing psychology things. I use it very regularly to help understand people, because my job, I deal with a lot of people in my job. So it's very important for me to be on top of things, and I don't have time to read thick books sometimes. So I go through this pictorial representation. And the last important business book I've read in probably in the last 5 years, the most important book is The Futurization by Parag Mathur. And I thought, when you are set for getting a job, especially the final year batch who's leaving out, I would really recommend that you read this book, The Futurization by Parag Mathur. Right. Do we have any time for, I'm sorry, I sort of went on and on.
And that's perfect, perfectly okay. I think this is what you shared was wonderful. Like, you covered so many things. So we are open for Q&A. Maybe we can take some 2-3 questions. I saw Sai Kapil raising the hand. I don't know whether Kapil you wanted to ask or it was by mistake. And I'm sure the books which you've shared, I will suggest them to the library and we will see if we can get them. That will be better.
I know, guys, I took so much of your time. Thank you so much for attending this. If you have questions, go ahead and ask, but if you don't, it's okay. But really thankful for your time. It's very tough to go through and listening to someone on the phone. So really good for your patience, actually. I don't think I can have so much of patience to just go through listening to someone, actually. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Samasti, are you there? Samasti?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah, yes, Samasti, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And now you are also visible.
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah, great, Samasti.
Okay, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Hello, Nidhi.
Hi.
Ma'am. Hi, I am Samasti Kuntia. On behalf of all the IB students, management and faculty, I would like to take this opportunity and thank you, ma'am, for joining us for this webinar. And you like the topics that you covered, for example, like digitalization, data, AI, microservice, customer behavior, even brand equity, networking, and many more. We will definitely going to use that in the near future, because as we are a very fresh batch in this management field, and we will like in 2 or maybe 1 year people are going to see the corporate world, so that these information will definitely going to help near future. And thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. And I would also like to thank the organizing committee for like organizing this webinar, which will like help us connect to you even more. It helps us know you a little bit more. And I also like to thank all the students for their active participation with this warm words and message. Now we shall going forward to the closing of this session. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Samasti. And you don't have to call me ma'am. You can just take my name.
Okay, ma'am.
Oh, okay, Nidhi.
Yeah, probably that has to make them to start taking my name also.
No, because
So
once you start in office, they'll just take first name. So
right,
ma'am and sir
yeah,
will go with. That's all
I
right.
know that. Yeah, great. So great, Nidhi, it was wonderful. Like I must say, what a treat to listen to you and to have you with us after a
No
long, long
worries.
time. And I'm sure, like with some of my students will connect with you over LinkedIn, and some of the students who are like who are keen into finance, probably. Let me see if I can organize some very special talks for them. I'll talk to you like
Yep.
off the session. So that
Yep.
will be great. So thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a
No
lot.
worries. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, bye guys.
Bye.